Driver stops CEO from signing a contract. What happened next shaked the whole room. Let me tell you about David Chen, a tech entrepreneur who built his software company from nothing into a global powerhouse. David was known for his sharp business instincts, his ability to spot opportunities others missed, and his knack for turning failing companies into gold mines. But on this particular Tuesday morning in downtown Singapore, all of that experience was about to mean nothing. Because sometimes, the most important voice in the room is the one nobody expects to hear. David's driver, Ahmad, was a quiet man in his 50s who had immigrated from Indonesia 20 years earlier. Every morning at 7:30 sharp, Ahmad would pull up to David's penthouse in a pristine black Mercedes, greet him with a respectful nod, and drive him wherever business demanded. For 3 years, Ahmad had been the invisible presence in David's life. He knew every shortcut through Singapore's busy streets, every client's address by heart, and every detail of David's schedule. But what David didn't know was that Ahmad spoke 7 languages fluently, had a degree in international law from the University of Indonesia, and had once worked as a contract negotiator for multinational corporations. You see, life had dealt Ahmad some difficult cards. The 1998 Asian financial crisis had destroyed his law firm, and with a young family to support, he had taken whatever work he could find. Driving became his profession, but his sharp legal mind never stopped working. During those long hours waiting outside boardrooms and offices, Ahmad would often overhear conversations, read documents left on seats, and piece together the complex deals his passengers were negotiating. He never interfered, never offered opinions. He was just the driver. Until that Tuesday morning when everything changed. Before we continue with this incredible story, I want you to drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button because stories like this one don't come around every day. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. The meeting was supposed to be the crown jewel of David's career. Tech Global Industries, a massive conglomerate based in Germany, wanted to acquire David's artificial intelligence software for their autonomous vehicle project. The offer was staggering. $50 million up front, plus royalties that could reach another $30 million over 5 years. David's lawyers had spent months negotiating the terms, and today was the day to sign. The German executives had flown in specifically for this moment, and the champagne was already chilling in the conference room. As Ahmad drove David to the meeting that morning, he noticed something different about his passenger. David was unusually quiet, staring out the window with a furrowed brow. Finally, David spoke up. "Ahmad, do you ever wonder if success changes people? If maybe we start missing the things that really matter?" Ahmad met his eyes in the rearview mirror. "Sir, in my experience, success doesn't change people. It reveals who they really are." David nodded thoughtfully, then returned to his silence. Neither man knew that in just 2 hours, those words would prove to be prophetic. The Tech Global offices occupied the top 3 floors of one of Singapore's most prestigious buildings. As they pulled up to the entrance, David straightened his tie and gathered his briefcase. "This is it, Ahmad. Wish me luck." "Good luck, sir. I'll be waiting for you." But Ahmad wasn't just waiting. As David disappeared into the building, Ahmad's mind was racing. Something about this deal had been bothering him for weeks. He'd overheard enough phone calls and seen enough documents to know the basic terms, but there was something that didn't add up. The German company was offering too much money too quickly for a technology that, while innovative, wasn't yet proven in the market. In his years as a lawyer, Ahmad had learned that when a deal seems too good to be true, it usually is. Unable to shake his concerns, Ahmad decided to do something he'd never done before. He took out his phone and started researching Tech Global Industries. What he found made his blood run cold. Hidden in the depths of German business records, Ahmad discovered that Tech Global had a disturbing pattern. They would acquire promising technology companies, strip away their intellectual property, and then shut down the original businesses, leaving the founders with nothing but their initial payment. Even worse, they had a legal team that specialized in finding loopholes in acquisition contracts, allowing them to avoid paying the promised royalties. 3 companies in the past 5 years had fallen victim to this exact scheme. Ahmad's hands were shaking as he read testimonial after testimonial from founders who had trusted Tech Global, only to watch their life's work disappear into a corporate black hole. One founder, a brilliant engineer from Munich, had committed suicide after losing everything. Another had spent his entire settlement fighting legal battles he could never win. But the most damning evidence came from a German business journal article that Ahmad found using his language skills. Written entirely in German, the article detailed Tech Global's strategy of targeting Asian tech companies specifically because they believed Asian entrepreneurs were less likely to understand the nuances of German corporate law. The article even mentioned that they had their eye on several Singapore-based AI companies. Ahmad looked at his watch. David had been in the meeting for an hour and a half. If the pattern held, they would be presenting the contract for signature right about now. Ahmad knew he had perhaps 15 minutes before it would be too late. His mind raced through his options. He could call David, but David would likely ignore a call from his driver during such an important meeting. He could try to reach David's assistant, but she was in another building across town. He could wait and tell David after the meeting, but by then the contract would be signed and the damage would be done. There was only one option left, and it went against every instinct Ahmad had developed over 3 years of being invisible, of staying in his lane, of never overstepping his bounds. He would have to walk into that boardroom and interrupt the most important business meeting of his boss's life. Ahmad parked the car and walked through the lobby with purpose. The security guard looked at him suspiciously. "I'm Mr. Chen's driver," Ahmad explained. "He asked me to deliver an urgent message." The elevator ride to the 40th floor felt like an eternity. Ahmad's heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. He'd never been in a situation like this before. He was about to humiliate himself, probably lose his job, and potentially ruin his boss's biggest deal. But he also knew that if he did nothing, David would lose everything he'd worked for. The elevator doors opened to reveal a luxurious reception area. Ahmad could hear voices coming from the conference room at the end of the hall. He walked toward the sound, his footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. Through the glass doors, he could see David sitting at a massive mahogany table, surrounded by men in expensive suits. David was holding a pen, leaning forward to sign the contract. Ahmad didn't knock. He pushed open the doors and stepped into the room. "Mr. Chen," he said loudly, his voice carrying an urgency that made everyone turn. "Sir, I need to speak with you immediately. It's about the contract." The room fell silent. David looked up, confusion and embarrassment written across his face. The German executives exchanged glances, clearly annoyed by the interruption. David's own lawyers looked mortified. "Ahmad, what are you doing here?" David asked, his voice tight with embarrassment. "Sir, please. I need to speak with you privately. It's urgent." One of the German executives, a stern man with silver hair, spoke up in accented English. "Mr. Chen, perhaps we should continue. Your driver can wait outside." But Ahmad wasn't backing down. In fluent German, he addressed the executive directly. "Herr Muller, I know about the other companies. I know about the pattern. I know what happened to the founders in Munich and Frankfurt. The effect was immediate and electric." The German executives' faces went pale. David stared at Ahmad in shock, not just because his driver had interrupted the meeting, but because his driver was speaking perfect German. The lawyers on both sides looked confused and alarmed. David stood up slowly. "Ahmad, what are you talking about?" Ahmad switched back to English, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. "Sir, Tech Global has acquired and destroyed 3 companies in the past 5 years using contracts almost identical to this one. They take the technology, use legal loopholes to avoid paying royalties, and then shut down the original companies. There's a German business journal article from last month that specifically mentions their interest in Singapore AI companies." The German executive, Herr Muller, tried to regain control. "This is preposterous. Your driver is clearly confused. We are a legitimate corporation with a stellar reputation. But Ahmad was ready for this. From his phone, he began reading, in German, directly from the Business Journal article. As he spoke, Herr Muller's face grew redder and redder. The other German executives began whispering urgently among themselves. David's lead lawyer, a sharp woman named Sarah, leaned forward. "Ahmad, are you saying you can prove these allegations?" "Yes, ma'am. I have the Business Journal article, I have the German corporate records, and I have contact information for the founders of the 3 companies that were destroyed. One of them, Hans Weber, is actually in Singapore right now. He's been trying to warn other companies about Tech Global's practices." The room erupted in chaos. The German executives were shouting at each other in German. David's lawyers were demanding to see the evidence. David himself was staring at Ahmad with a mixture of gratitude and amazement. Herr Muller made one last attempt to salvage the situation. "Mr. Chen, surely you're not going to let your driver destroy this deal based on conspiracy theories and gossip?" David looked at Ahmad for a long moment. Here was a man who had been invisible for 3 years, who had never spoken out of turn, who had never interfered in business matters. And yet, Ahmad had risked everything to save him. The sincerity in Ahmad's eyes, the desperation in his voice, the fact that he spoke languages David didn't even know he knew, it all added up to something David couldn't ignore. "I'm sorry, gentlemen," David said finally, "but I'm not signing this contract today. Sarah, please gather all the documents. Ahmad, I want to see everything you've found." The German executives left in a fury, making threats about lost opportunities and damaged relationships. But David didn't care. As the room emptied, he turned to Ahmad with tears in his eyes. "Why?" David asked. "Why did you risk everything for me?" Ahmad smiled quietly. "Sir, 3 years ago, when I first interviewed for this job, I was desperate. I had been unemployed for 8 months, and my family was struggling. You could have hired any driver in Singapore. Younger, more experienced, with better references. But you looked at me and saw something others missed. You gave me a chance when no one else would. Today, I wanted to return the favor." Over the next week, everything Ahmad had claimed proved to be true. Hans Weber, the German founder who had been destroyed by Tech Global, provided additional evidence. Other companies came forward with similar stories. Tech Global's stock price plummeted when the story broke in the international business press. But the real transformation happened between David and Ahmad. David offered to help Ahmad return to the legal profession, but Ahmad declined. "I like driving," he said. "It gives me time to think, to observe, to understand the world around me. But perhaps we could work together in other ways." David made Ahmad his director of international business development. Ahmad's language skills, legal background, and ability to see through corporate deceptions made him invaluable in negotiations. Within a year, David's company had expanded into 12 new markets, with Ahmad leading the charge. The story spread throughout Singapore's business community. Other executives began paying closer attention to the people around them. Their drivers, their assistants, their security guards. They realized that wisdom and intelligence don't always come with corner offices and expensive suits. David eventually sold his company, but not to Tech Global. He found a buyer who shared his values and respected his technology. The sale price was actually higher than Tech Global's offer, and more importantly, it came with guarantees that the technology would be used to benefit society rather than just generate profits. Years later, when David was asked about the most important moment in his business career, he didn't mention the IPO or the acquisition or any of the deals that made the headlines. He talked about the day his driver taught him the difference between hearing and listening, between seeing and truly observing. Success, David would say, isn't about surrounding yourself with people who tell you what you want to hear. It's about surrounding yourself with people who care enough to tell you what you need to know, even when it's difficult, even when it's risky, even when it goes against everything you think you understand about the world. Ahmad still drives for David, even though he doesn't need to anymore. Every morning at 7:30 sharp, he pulls up to David's house in that same black Mercedes. But now, instead of sitting in silence, They spend their commute discussing business strategy, reviewing contracts, and planning their next move. Because sometimes, the most important voice in the room is the one that comes from the front seat. The lesson here isn't just about business or contracts or corporate deception. It's about the power of paying attention to the people around you, of recognizing that intelligence and wisdom come in many forms, and of understanding that sometimes the person who can save you is the one you least expect. Think about your own life. Who are the people you pass by every day without really seeing? Your doorman, your barista, your cleaning lady, your Uber driver? What stories do they carry? What knowledge do they possess? What perspectives could they offer if you just took the time to listen? In a world that often values titles over character, degrees over wisdom, and status over substance, Ahmad's story reminds us that the most valuable insights often come from the most unexpected places. Sometimes, the person who can change your life is sitting right in front of you, waiting for you to notice, waiting for you to listen, waiting for you to understand that real intelligence isn't about what you know. It's about being smart enough to recognize what you don't know and humble enough to learn from anyone who can teach you. So the next time you find yourself in a position of power or influence, remember Ahmad and David. Remember that the best leaders are those who understand that leadership isn't about being the smartest person in the room. It's about being smart enough to listen to everyone in the room, especially the voices that others might overlook. And if you're someone who feels invisible, someone who feels like your voice doesn't matter, remember that your knowledge, your perspective, and your insights have value. You might be the Ahmad in someone else's story, the person who can see what others miss, the one who can save the day when it matters most. What did you think of this incredible story? Have you ever been in a situation where someone unexpected changed your life? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories like this one. Because the truth is, these moments of unexpected heroism happen every day, all around us. We just need to be paying attention.